Listen carefully, because this is one of those truths that hits harder the moment you realize it applies to you, not other people. Your mind doesn't break during a disaster because you're weak. It breaks because it's following ancient wiring that was never designed for collapsing cities, grid failures, or the kind of sudden chaos modern life can throw at you. And the most dangerous part, you won't even notice it happening. You'll swear you're thinking clearly while your brain quietly sabotages your survival without asking your permission. Let's pull that curtain back. Here's the thing nobody tells you. The first threat during any disaster isn't fire or falling debris or even looters. It's the mental freefall that happens in the first 30 seconds. Your brain loves patterns. It clings to routines like a life raft. So when the world suddenly stops behaving the way you expect, lights go out, alarms start, the ground shakes, your mind doesn't switch into hero mode. It freezes. Not dramatically, not with screaming, just silence. A blank, that, I hope this isn't what I think it is moment. That's called denial, and it's the first stage of mental breakdown in a crisis. Researchers found that people can waste up to 10 minutes just standing there trying to make reality behave again. 10 minutes where danger doesn't care, and if you think you're immune, you're exactly who denial hits hardest. When your brain finally accepts the disaster is real, it swings violently to the opposite extreme. Tunnel vision. It sounds useful, like the mind going into sniper mode, but it's actually doing the opposite. You lock onto one tiny detail, like the flickering exit sign or the sound of someone screaming, and you lose awareness of everything else that matters. This is biology misinterpreting a modern emergency as a predator attack. Your survival brain is screaming, there's one threat, focus only on that. But disasters aren't tigers. They're multi-layered, shifting environments. Tunnel vision makes you miss exits, miss dangers, miss opportunities. This is why well-trained responders practice scanning and mental resets. They force themselves to widen their view every few seconds. It's not instinct, it's discipline forged from repetition. Then comes the adrenaline dump, and this is where things get even more interesting. Adrenaline is great for giving you speed, strength, and the power to lift a fridge if you had to. But it also wrecks your fine motor skills and logical reasoning. If your hands feel shaky, your decisions probably are too. People in disasters often forget simple steps: how to open a latch, how to dial a number they've known for years, even how to speak in full sentences. Your working memory, the part of your brain that holds short-term information, shrinks dramatically. Military survival manuals warn that under extreme stress, your IQ can effectively drop by 30%. That's not an insult. That's physiology throttling your brain to push energy into raw survival mode. Now let's talk about the psychological trap nobody expects. Overconfidence. Right after adrenaline hits, many people feel an artificial sense of clarity. It's fake. It's your brain giving you the illusion of control to stop you from shutting down. But that false clarity leads to dumb decisions. Running into unknown areas. Checking noises you should avoid. Carrying too much gear. Or believing you can outrun something you absolutely cannot. Overconfidence kills more people in search and rescue case studies than hesitation. The fix is simple. Force yourself to pause for 3 slow breaths. Not to calm down, forget that wellness nonsense, because those breaths give your frontal cortex just enough oxygen and time to re-engage. That tiny gap is where rational thought sneaks back in. Then comes the emotional crash. Fear, guilt, anger, dread, they all hit like a wave. Not because the danger is rising, but because your brain suddenly realizes how much it has missed. This is where people break socially. They argue, panic publicly, freeze again, or start making irrational decisions like trying to save items instead of lives. The psychology of disaster shows that people often cling to objects, phones, bags, personal items, because losing them feels like losing identity. But in a survival situation, identity is irrelevant. Mobility is everything. If you feel yourself clinging to something, it's your brain trying to feel normal again, and the cost can be fatal. This section is based on practical field survival experience rather than formal academic sources. Now let's hit the most brutal part. The mind's collapse into task saturation. In a disaster, your brain receives too much information, sounds, threats, sensations, decisions, and you can't process all of it. So it starts dropping tasks. You think you're multitasking, but really you're shedding responsibilities like old leaves. This is why people forget critical steps, like turning off gas valves or checking if water is drinkable. Your brain is overwhelmed and quietly prioritizing the wrong things. The military trains soldiers to solve this by using micro-objectives. Handle one tiny task, then the next, then the next. You don't think about surviving the next 24 hours. You think about surviving the next 20 seconds, then 20 more. Each success helps reassert mental control. But here's where the survivors separate from the casualties. The ability to run mental simulations. Your brain breaks under disaster because it hates uncertainty. So you beat uncertainty by imagining outcomes before they happen. Not in a dramatic cinematic way, just quick mental rehearsals. If that door is blocked, I cycle back. If the light fails, I crouch and feel the wall. If this street is dangerous, I switch to the alley. People who do this stay mentally ahead of the disaster instead of behind it. Firefighters, pilots, and rescue teams swear by this technique. It's not about predicting the future, it's about preventing cognitive paralysis. Finally, there's the mind's most desperate survival mechanism: emotional detachment. When the situation becomes too intense, your brain can switch off your emotions entirely, giving you a cold, almost robotic sense of calm. That might sound useful, but it's a double-edged sword. Emotionless decisions can keep you alive, but they can also make you reckless. You stop feeling fear, and fear is one of the best early warning systems your body has. If you ever find yourself feeling strangely calm while the world is burning, that's not bravery. It's your brain trying not to break. You have to consciously re-engage with the reality around you, grounding yourself through touch, sound, or a simple physical task like checking your gear. So if you're wondering how your mind breaks during a disaster, the truth is it doesn't shatter at once. It fails in stages. Denial, tunnel vision, adrenaline chaos, overconfidence, emotional crash, task saturation, and finally detachment. Survival isn't about being the strongest or fastest. It's about recognizing these mental traps and clawing your way back to clarity every time your brain tries to betray you. Because when the world collapses, your mind becomes the first battlefield, and if you can win there, you dramatically increase your odds everywhere else. You know how people imagine survival as a test of strength, courage, and grit? Forget all that. Real survival is a chess match against your own brain, and part 2 is where we get into the moves almost nobody knows. Moves that elite rescuers, pilots, and special operations teams use to keep their minds from tearing apart when everything around them is falling into chaos. These are the psychological tools that separate the people who shut down from the people who take command of their own biology. Here's the first one. Pattern replacement. When disaster strikes, the brain scrambles to match what's happening with something familiar. But in a true collapse scenario, total blackout, earthquake, riot, explosion, there is no familiar pattern. That mismatch creates panic. So trained survivors hack this by preloading mental scripts. It works like this. You pick a simple phrase that becomes your anchor, something like move, scan, breathe. And every time your environment collapses, you run that phrase like software. Your mind grabs onto it as the new pattern, reducing the panic response dramatically. Your body follows what the script tells it. You move, you scan, you breathe. And suddenly you're not frozen. You're functioning. This is why pilots rehearse emergency checklists over and over. They're replacing unpredictable chaos with predictable actions. Another huge hack is something I call controlled shrinking. And trust me, this is the secret sauce for staying functional under intense stress. Instead of trying to manage the entire disaster at once, you temporarily shrink your world to the next 5 seconds. Not the next 5 minutes, not the next escape route, not the whole building that's shaking. Just 5 seconds. What can you do in 5 seconds? Can you stand? Can you crouch? Can you move to cover? Can you get your bearings? Your brain can handle 5 seconds. 5 seconds doesn't overload it. And when the first 5 seconds are done, you ask again. That's how soldiers fight through shock. That's how mountaineers stay alive on collapsing ice. They shrink the world so the mind doesn't implode. This section is based on practical field survival experience rather than formal academic sources. There's also the sensory override, and this one is almost counterintuitive. During a disaster, your senses go chaotic. Too much noise, too much movement, too much adrenaline. The trick is to override one sense by focusing sharply on another. If your vision is overloaded, dust, smoke, darkness, you force your attention into sound. Identify just one clear sound. One direction, a creaking door, running water, footsteps. If sound is overwhelming, sirens, shouting, you switch to touch. The wall beside you, the ground beneath your shoes, the vibration of something shifting. This trick gives your brain a stable reference point in chaos, pulling you out of panic by giving you one reliable sensory anchor. Elite rescuers use this constantly, but the most powerful mental technique might be preemptive decision locking. When your brain is flooded with adrenaline, decision-making becomes slow and sloppy. You hesitate, you debate. You wonder if you're overreacting. Decision locking eliminates all that. You choose a plan before the danger peaks. For example, if the shaking gets worse, I move to that wall. If the lights go out, I go to the exit I scanned earlier. If the crowd surges, I move diagonally to break free. It's not guesswork, it's mental insurance. Your brain stops wasting energy debating options because the choice was already made. In survival psychology, this is called reducing cognitive load, but I call it removing the mental lag that kills people. Now let's dive into a strange but incredibly effective survival instinct hack. Borrowing calm from the future. Humans are terrible at staying calm in the moment, but surprisingly good at imagining themselves calm in the near future. So when panic spikes, you mentally project 5 minutes ahead and picture yourself already out of the danger zone, breathing normally, assessing the situation. The brain doesn't fully distinguish between imagined future calm and present calm. It begins adjusting your physiological response toward the imagined state. Your breathing evens out. Your heart rate drops slightly. Your hands steady just enough for you to function. This sounds abstract, but police negotiators, wilderness guides, and high-stress professionals use mental projection constantly. And now the one almost nobody talks about, background threat mapping. When your mind is stressed, it naturally focuses on immediate threats, falling debris, fire, screaming, shaking. But the real dangers often come after the initial shock. Gas leaks, structural collapses, secondary explosions. Panic-driven crowd behavior. The way elite survivors handle this is by creating a quiet mental map in the background, not actively, but passively. Is there something here that could fail next? Am I in a trap point? Where is the safest direction if the situation evolves? You're not thinking obsessively, just letting your survival brain track patterns. It's incredibly effective for avoiding the second strike of a disaster. Let's talk about one last mental mechanism. Identity detachment. This one is advanced, and it's more psychological than physical. In normal life, you operate with a strong sense of who you are. Your personality, your preferences, your emotions. In survival, that identity can get you killed because it tries to maintain normal behavior in a situation where normal is gone. Identity detachment means you temporarily operate like an observer, not a character. You don't act like the you from yesterday. You act like the version of you who exists only to solve the next problem. This is why seasoned survivors often describe feeling like they stepped outside themselves during the crisis. It wasn't disconnection. It was strategic identity suspension. Put all this together, and something interesting happens. Your mind stops being the weakest link and becomes your strongest asset. You stop freezing. You stop panicking. You stop falling into the predictable psychological traps that disasters rely on to overwhelm you. Instead, you think clearly enough to move, act, decide, and adapt. And when the world is collapsing, that's all survival really is, thinking clearly long enough to create your own chances,